When the unstoppable force of pure rage collides with the unyielding immensity of a galaxy consumed by war. What if a warrior whose only purpose is to annihilate the forces of hell were suddenly cast into a universe where the stakes are infinitely higher, the enemies more numerous, and the very fabric of reality itself is a battleground? Imagine, for a moment, the Doom Slayer, an avatar of vengeance, a being whose very existence is defined by destruction entering the grim, dark universe of Warhammer 40K, where survival is a myth. And the Emperor himself is a distant god surrounded by legions of humanity's finest and most tragic soldiers. By the end of this story, if you stay with me, you will witness not just the meeting of worlds, but a confrontation so brutal and profound that it will change your understanding of power, rage, and destiny forever. And if you watch till the end, I promise a revelation about the Doom Slayer that even the most devoted fans of both universes will find staggering, something that will redefine why he is truly unstoppable. The universe of Warhammer 40K is no ordinary battlefield. It is a galaxy of endless war, where humanity teeters on the edge of extinction, held together by the iron grip of the Imperium and the inscrutable will of the Emperor. Billions of souls scream in silent agony across countless worlds, their voices lost among the infinite void of space. Here, heroes are tragic, victories pyrrhic, and every act of bravery is a candle flickering against a storm of unrelenting darkness. It is a universe where the warp, an alternate dimension of raw psychic energy and malevolent entities, permeates all reality, twisting minds, corrupting souls, and spawning horrors that defy comprehension. To enter this galaxy unprepared is to court death, but to enter it armed with the fury and skill of the Doom Slayer, that is to invite chaos to meet its match. The Doom Slayer had not chosen this path. He had been cast into this universe not by accident, but by the collision of realities, the tearing of dimensions caused by powers that neither mortal nor demon could fully grasp. He awoke on a desolate, ash-choked world orbiting a dying sun, the sky a constant swirl of storm clouds, and the horizon pierced by the skeletal remains of ruined citadels. The air tasted of iron and ozone, thick with the scent of burned flesh and the faint tang of psychic radiation. He had fought in hell itself, battled against demonic legions that sought to consume his very soul, yet this universe, this galaxy felt different. Here, every shadow was a threat, every sound a potential harbinger of annihilation. Before his arrival, the galaxy had already known suffering on a scale that could break the heart of any god. Entire civilizations had been eradicated by tyrannids, the Xenos swarms that consume everything in their path. Planets had been consumed by the flames of orcs, whose brutal cunning and lust for war defied reason. Corruption from the chaos gods, the ruinous powers who dwell in the warp, had infiltrated countless worlds, turning humans against one another and giving rise to traitor legions once loyal to Emperor, and everywhere, the Imperium of Man fought a losing battle, defending worlds with the valor of saints, but the tools of mortals. The Doom Slayer, whose every act is defined by sheer will and the power of his rage, suddenly realized he was no longer in hell, but in a far more merciless, incomprehensible version of it. As he moved through the ruins, the ground beneath him cracked with every step, and he sensed presences he could not immediately define. Psychic echoes of battles long past whispered to him through the air, and he could feel the weight of countless deaths pressing down upon him. It was here that he first encountered the Astartes, the Space Marines. Titans of humanity, genetically enhanced warriors forged from the Emperor's own gene, seed, clad in armor that gleamed with ceramite and adorned with the heraldry of their chapters. They were imposing, unyielding, and yet, unlike the demons of hell, they fought not for chaos or destruction, but for a vision of humanity that was tragically distant from reality. The Doom Slayer's arrival did not go unnoticed. A squad of Ultramarines soldiers renowned for their discipline and loyalty approached cautiously, bolters raised, sensing the aura of someone who was neither fully human nor entirely comprehensible. It was in that moment, when bolters trained on him and his presence radiated an intensity that rivaled the psychic storms of the warp, that the Doom Slayer's power became evident to all. He was not merely strong, he was singular. Every muscle, every sinew, every instinct honed in the endless hellscapes of another dimension made him a predator unlike any other. When the first bolt struck him, it glanced off with a shower of sparks, barely scratching his armor, like hide. His fists shattered ceramite like it were clay. His speed made the Space Marines appear sluggish, and his very gaze carried the weight of inevitability. The squad fell silent, unsure whether to see him as an ally, a god, or a weapon of destruction. The origins of his power became clear through whispers of the past, revealed in the psychic echoes of the warp itself. The Doom Slayer's strength did not come from technology alone, nor from any conventional training. It came from a singular, unyielding will, a soul forged in eternal war, tempered in the fires of hell, and made whole by an unrelenting desire to punish the guilty. Each demon he had destroyed, each world he had raised in vengeance, had added to his essence, granting him not just physical power, but the uncanny ability to sense weakness, to exploit it, and to annihilate it without hesitation. In the context of Warhammer 40K, where power is often bound by faith, psychic potential, or sheer numbers, the Doom Slayer was an anomaly, an embodiment of pure, undiluted action, untethered to ideology or loyalty, yet capable of deciding the fate of thousands in a single strike. And yet, even he had to learn quickly that the enemies of this galaxy were unlike anything he had faced before. Demons in hell were bound by their own nature, predictable in their chaos. Here, the forces of chaos were sentient, clever, and infinitely patient. They could manipulate entire planetary systems with whispers in the minds of mortals, seducing, corrupting, and destroying from within. Xeno's species plotted in ways that defied linear thought, and the Imperium, though vast, was riddled with bureaucratic stagnation that made swift action nearly impossible. For the first time, the Doom Slayer realized that raw power alone might not be enough. He needed understanding, strategy, and perhaps allies, but allies in this universe were as likely to betray him as to aid him. Amidst this uncertainty, he found himself drawn toward an ancient fortress, monastery, long abandoned but still resonating with residual psychic energy. The ruins whispered of battles fought eons ago, of heroes who had risen and fallen, and of secrets buried deep beneath layers of stone and memory. It was here that the first inklings of a plan formed in his mind. If he was to survive, and to confront the true horrors of this galaxy, he would need to harness not just his fury, but the latent power embedded in this universe itself. The warp, despite its dangers, offered potential, as did the relics and technologies left behind by centuries of human endeavor and sacrifice. To master them, however, he would have to confront the most fundamental truth of Warhammer 40K, that survival often comes at the cost of one's humanity, morality, or very soul. By the time the first act of this cosmic collision reached its peak, the Doom Slayer was no longer merely an interloper. He had become a force of reckoning, an agent of destruction whose presence alone shifted the balance of power in subtle but profound ways. The Space Marines who had first approached him now recognized that they were witnessing the birth of a new legend, one that could tip the scales against chaos itself. And yet, the reward for the viewer, if you stay with me through the rest of this story, will be something even more extraordinary. You will witness the Doomslayer's first confrontation with a Chaos Lord, a battle that will test not just his strength, but the very essence of his being, and reveal the shocking reason why even the most fearsome beings in Warhammer 40K must tremble before him. So, if you are ready to step into the void with him, to feel the tension of worlds hanging by a thread, and to witness a story where the line between hero and unstoppable force blurs, then stay with me. The journey has only just begun, and what comes next will be unlike anything you have ever imagined. An apocalypse wrapped in fury, strategy, and unrelenting war. What is a warrior without an enemy worthy of his wrath? The Doomslayer, having awakened on the ash-choked planet, soon realized that to survive here, survival alone was insufficient. The galaxy did not merely challenge the body. It tested the mind, spirit, and very essence of those who dared to move through it. As he stepped further into the desolate fortress, monastery, the air itself seemed to resist him. Every stone whispered threats, every shadow harbored unseen eyes, and the faint hum of ancient machinery hinted at powers long dormant, but still capable of devastation. This was no longer merely a battlefield. It was a crucible designed to forge legends or shatter them entirely. As he navigated the labyrinthine corridors, a subtle vibration beneath his feet drew his attention. Doomslayer paused, sensing the faint psychic tremor of something ancient and malignant. The warp, that chaotic mirror of reality, pulsed around him like a living heartbeat, and through it, he could hear whispers, threads of thought from creatures far beyond mortal comprehension. And then he saw them, the first true agents of chaos, not the mindless demons of hell he knew, but mortals transformed into weapons of despair, champions of the ruinous powers. Their armor was blackened and etched with runes that pulsed with an eerie crimson light, and their eyes glowed with a malevolent intelligence that chilled even the unflinching warrior. These were Chaos Space Marines, corrupted sons of the Emperor himself, fallen and reborn in the service of gods whose names were unutterable. The Doomslayer did not hesitate. His fists clenched, his instincts honed over centuries of battle, alerting him to every threat, every possible strike, every advantage. And yet, even as he charged, he felt the difference. These foes were unlike any he had faced. They did not flee in terror, they did not stagger under fear. They advanced with purpose, coordinated in ways that demons never were. When their bolters cracked, the Doomslayer's reflexes became preternatural. Bolts struck the walls, ricocheted, and one grazed him enough to sting, but not enough to halt him. He tore through their ranks, each blow of his gauntlet a symphony of destruction, each step forward a statement of inevitability. Yet with every fallen enemy, the weight of the universe's cruelty pressed upon him. In the midst of combat, he began to understand something fundamental about the nature of power in this universe. Here, strength alone was insufficient. The Chaos Space Marines wielded weapons and armor infused with the warp itself. Their blows carried psychic resonance. Their weapons could slice not only flesh, but the threads of reality itself. For the first time, Doomslayer felt the tug of something unfamiliar, the warp attempting to probe him, to ensnare him in visions of despair, to exploit fear he did not possess. But his will, forged in the fires of hell, remained unbroken. Where others might falter, where humans might scream, where even seasoned astartes could hesitate, he adapted. Each encounter was not just physical. It was a duel of essence, of intent, of raw domination. As the battle raged, he noticed something else, an artifact of terrible significance embedded in the heart of the fortress. A relic of the Emperor's age, a device whose mere existence radiated psychic energy strong enough to tear reality. It pulsed with a rhythm that resonated with the Doomslayer's own essence, as though recognizing in him a kindred force. It was then he realized the relic was a key, not merely to survival, but to understanding this universe, to harnessing its latent power without succumbing to the madness of the warp. And yet, claiming it would not be simple. The Chaos Champions had sensed it too, and they advanced with renewed ferocity, a living tide of hatred and cunning. In the struggle that followed, the Doomslayer began to adapt to this new style of combat. He learned to read the subtle cues of psychic corruption, to anticipate attacks guided by forces unseen, and to turn the environment itself into an ally. Columns crumbled beneath the weight of his foes, ancient machinery fired without instruction at intruders, and the air itself seemed to bend to his will. Slowly, inexorably, he advanced. Every enemy slain, every obstacle destroyed, was a lesson in this universe's cruel logic. He was learning the language of Warhammer 40K, even as he imposed his own brutal grammar upon it. It was during this relentless advance that he encountered the first truly monstrous adversary, a greater demon of Khorne, summoned from the warp to punish any who dared challenge the forces of chaos. Its form was massive, far larger than any demon he had fought in hell, and yet, unlike the chaotic entities of his past, this creature possessed purpose, intelligence, and a strategy. Its horns twisted like obsidian blades, its eyes burned with the fire of the blood god, and its every movement left echoes of psychic pain in the air. Doomslayer felt no fear, but he did feel the weight of inevitability pressing upon him. This was a challenge that would push every fiber of his being. The first clash shook the foundation of the fortress. Each strike of the demon's claw tore stone and reality alike. Each counter of Doomslayer's weapon, each swing of his fist, reverberated with raw power that even the warp seemed to acknowledge. Time itself seemed to stretch and compress, a cruel jest of the universe, as they danced a deadly ballet of force and fury. And yet, within this chaos, Doomslayer discovered something new, a method to his mastery of Warhammer 40K's rules. The relic he sought emitted a frequency that disrupted the demon's connection to the warp, weakening it, if only slightly. With this insight, he began to turn the tide. Every blow of the Doomslayer was now an expression of understanding, a fusion of instinct and strategy. The demon roared, a sound that echoed across the fortress and into the very warpways of the galaxy. Yet even as it fell, shredded by unrelenting force, a whisper reached him, a forewarning of the true scale of the enemies he had yet to face. This universe was not merely hell with higher stakes. It was a living organism of conflict, a machine of endless war, where every victory carried consequences, and every action rippled outward across the tapestry of existence. By the end of this first confrontation, Doomslayer stood amidst ruins, his breath heavy, his armor scarred, yet his resolve unbroken. He had survived, adapted, and conquered foes that even the most seasoned space marine would regard with awe and terror. And yet, he knew this was only the beginning. The forces of chaos were infinite, their ambition boundless, and the universe itself was an ever-shifting battlefield of despair and opportunity. The reward for those who continue with this story. In the next chapter, you will witness the Doomslayer's first encounter with a Primarch, a being of almost godlike power, and see how even legends must bow before destiny if they are not cunning enough to seize it for themselves. Have you ever faced a being so immense, so impossibly powerful, that every instinct screamed both awe and terror. Doomslayer had fought countless demons in hell, each one a master of rage and destruction, yet nothing had prepared him for what awaited in the depths of this universe. He had toppled chaos champions, survived a greater demon of Khorne, and adapted to the alien rules of the warp. But now he sensed the presence of a force that dwarfed even the most potent enemies he had encountered. A Primarch. Not merely a warrior, but a god, like progeny of the Emperor himself, whose very existence shaped the fates of entire worlds. The fortress he had claimed as a temporary bastion of control began to tremble. The air grew heavy, saturated with psychic energy that seemed to warp time and space. Shadows lengthened unnaturally, and the walls themselves hummed with anticipation. Doomslayer's instincts told him that this was no ordinary challenge. The universe was testing him not merely his strength, but his resolve, his adaptability, and the raw intensity of his will. From the mist of the ruins, a figure emerged, massive, armored, and radiating authority that could bend both men and machines alike. The Primarch's eyes, twin orbs of celestial intensity, fixed upon Doomslayer with an unflinching appraisal, reading the essence of a being forged entirely for war. Primarchs were no strangers to conquest or combat. Each was genetically engineered, the pinnacle of human potential, raised to command legions and crush galaxies in the name of the Emperor. Yet there was something unusual about this intruder, a mortal whose rage alone defied expectation, whose victories over otherworldly horrors hinted at an almost unnatural power. Doomslayer did not speak. Words were unnecessary. His presence alone communicated his intent. He would fight, survive, and impose his will upon this new universe, as he had in every reality before. The first strike was not physical. The Primarch unleashed a psychic probe, an invisible tendril of energy seeking to assess Doomslayer's mind, to exploit fear, doubt, or hesitation. The Doomslayer, trained to resist the infernal whispers of hell itself, felt a shock unlike any before. It was not pain, but comprehension, an evaluation of his very soul, yet he did not flinch. Centuries of battle had honed his mental defenses. Every whisper of despair, every vision of death, he met with fury, redirecting it outward as sheer kinetic force. The Primarch paused, impressed, realizing that this was a creature whose mind was as unyielding as his body. Then the real battle began. The Primarch's weapon, a monolithic blade that could cleave tanks, as though they were paper, descended upon him. Doomslayer countered, dodging with uncanny speed, his gauntlets smashing stone and debris in the process. Sparks flew, echoes of destruction reverberating through the ancient corridors. Each strike was more than combat. It was a clash of philosophies, of realities. Doomslayer embodied raw action, unfiltered and relentless, while the Primarch represented perfection honed over centuries, a blend of strategy, genetics, and destiny. They collided in a fury of force, shaking foundations and warping the air with each blow. In this exchange, the Doomslayer began to realize the true depth of Warhammer 40K's power hierarchy. Strength, rage, and instinct were crucial, but they were only part of the equation. Understanding one's enemy, predicting patterns, exploiting weaknesses, and merging raw power with calculated precision became paramount. He adapted quickly, learning to read the rhythm of the Primarch's strikes, recognizing not just the motion, but the intent behind each attack. Where hell had demanded fury, Warhammer demanded mastery of perception itself. Yet even as the battle raged, the universe whispered its secrets. Psychic emanations from the warp hinted at hidden pathways, relics, and allies. Doomslayer understood that to survive this encounter, brute force alone would not suffice. He needed to wield every tool at his disposal: his unmatched strength, the relics embedded in the fortress, and an understanding of how Warhammer 40K's myriad forces interacted. It was a lesson in adaptation, a realization that power without context could be wasted, even by one as unstoppable as him. Amid the chaos, the Primarch began to speak, not in anger, but in measured authority, a voice that carried the weight of millennia and the certainty of destiny. "Mortal interloper, you possess the strength of the gods and the fury of hell itself. Yet this galaxy is not yours. Do you comprehend the consequences of your intrusion? Every life, every world, every soul may bend or break beneath your will. What will you do when the tide turns against you?" Doomslayer responded not with words, but with action. Each motion, each strike, communicated defiance, resolve, and an unflinching commitment to survival. The Primarch, though unmatched in human terms, realized something profound. Doomslayer was not bound by allegiance, ideology, or mortality. He fought with a singularity of purpose that even the greatest of the Emperor's sons could not fully predict or control. By the end of this confrontation, neither combatant was destroyed. Yet the battle left an indelible mark. The Primarch recognized the Doomslayer as a force that could alter the course of galactic conflict, a weapon, or a wild card, unfettered by loyalty. Doomslayer, in turn, understood the vastness of the universe he had entered, the enemies yet to face, and the complex web of power that even his fury could not ignore. The galaxy was no longer a simple battlefield. It was a chessboard, and he had just met a piece capable of checkmate if he were careless. The reward for those who continue with this journey is coming. In the next chapter, you will witness the Doomslayer's first confrontation with the forces of the Inquisition and the dark conspiracies of the Imperium itself, a test of morality, strategy, and the unrelenting weight of consequence. You will see him navigate not only enemies, but the very politics of a universe built on faith, fear, and fanaticism. And there, you will understand why even an unstoppable force must sometimes bend, or risk being consumed by the very systems that define power in Warhammer 40K. What happens when a force of pure destruction enters a society built on faith, fear, and ironclad hierarchy? Doomslayer had faced hell itself, battled legions of demons, and challenged the mightiest warriors the universe had to offer. Yet the Imperium of Man was a different kind of battlefield, a labyrinth of paranoia, fanaticism, and unyielding scrutiny. His mere presence on a human, inhabited planet drew the attention of agents who were as merciless as the foes he had fought in hell, the Inquisition. They were hunters of heresy, masters of interrogation, and arbiters of fate, tasked with ensuring the survival of humanity at all costs, even if that meant eliminating potential threats before they acted. As he traversed a sprawling hive city, the Doomslayer noticed subtle signs of vigilance. Citizens glanced nervously from behind shuttered windows. Guards' weapons were always trained, always ready. Here, even the shadows whispered loyalty to the Emperor. He did not seek attention, but the mere aura of his presence, an unyielding force of raw power, was enough to set the gears of the Inquisition turning. Soon, a cotter of agents intercepted him. Clad in dark robes, their faces obscured, they radiated authority and suspicion, their psychers probing for anomalies, their vox communications humming with coded signals. One of them, an inquisitor of the Ordo Malleus, stepped forward. "You do not belong here," the inquisitor said, his voice echoing through the narrow streets. "You are not human in the sense we understand. Your arrival has fractured psychic fields across the sector. Tell me, what are you, and why have you come to our Emperor's domain?" Doomslayer did not answer immediately. He had no allegiance to this universe, no oath to its rulers, and no concern for bureaucratic justification. But he understood the need for strategy. Words could be a weapon as potent as fists or firearms when dealing with forces like the Inquisition. "I seek not to conquer, nor to worship," he replied, his voice carrying the weight of inevitability. "I seek only to destroy those who would spread death and corruption." The Inquisitor studied him, noting the aura of power that seemed to resist their psychic probing. "You speak of destruction, yet your power could rival our greatest champions. How do we know you will not become a threat to humanity itself? How do we know you will not fall to the very corruption you claim to oppose?" It was a challenge not unlike those Doomslayer had faced countless times before, yet the stakes were higher. Here, the rules were different. The Imperium valued loyalty, faith, and hierarchy above raw strength. Doomslayer, whose will was forged by rage and action alone, could neither bend nor kneel to these principles. But he recognized a truth. To navigate this universe successfully, he must understand not just his enemies, but its systems of power and control. The trial began. The Inquisitor summoned agents, psychers, and veterans of countless battles to test him. They placed him in scenarios designed to exploit fear, to test loyalty, and to detect susceptibility to chaos. Yet Doomslayer moved through each trial with efficiency and precision. Psychic assaults that would cripple ordinary humans barely registered. Complex combat scenarios, designed to test strategy and adaptability, were countered with instinctive genius. And in every encounter, his fury became his weapon, his focus a shield against manipulation. Even so, the universe was not without its lessons. The Inquisition's trials revealed subtleties that raw strength could not address. Some agents wielded relics that manipulated probability, while others exploited psychic vulnerabilities in ways that were alien to him. Doomslayer began to understand that Warhammer 40K's most dangerous weapon was not the power of one individual, but the network of power, knowledge, and influence spread across countless actors. To survive, he could not act alone. He had to exploit the same systems his enemies trusted blindly. It was during the final trial that the first real test of morality arose. A heretic cult had taken control of a hive sector, threatening millions of lives. The Inquisitor's command was clear: eliminate the cult, but minimize collateral damage. For Doomslayer, minimizing collateral damage was a foreign concept. The universe had always demanded total obliteration, and hesitation often meant death. Yet here, the stakes were human lives, governed not by instinct, but by ethical constraints imposed by the Imperium. He adapted, blending fury with precision. The cultists were annihilated, but the civilian population was spared. The Inquisitor observed silently, impressed yet wary. "You have survived our trials," the Inquisitor said, a mixture of respect and unease in his tone. "Yet know this, your power, while unmatched, makes you a paradox in our universe. You are an agent of destruction, yet bound by choice, not loyalty. The Emperor himself would have need of such a being, but so too could our enemies." Doomslayer understood the implication. In this universe, power was meaningless without understanding its consequences. Every strike, every kill, every action had ramifications beyond comprehension. To face chaos, to confront the threats that dwarfed even hell itself, he would need allies or at least strategic alliances. And yet, trust was an alien concept. Every human, every soldier, every psyker could be swayed, corrupted, or turned against him. The line between ally and adversary was perilously thin. By the end of this chapter, the Doom Slayer emerged not only victorious, but enlightened. He had faced the bureaucracy, the psychic probing, and the moral calculations of the Imperium, and adapted. He had learned the subtle language of power in a universe far more complex than the one he had known. And yet, a shadow loomed over him. The forces of chaos had already taken notice of this anomaly. Whispers in the warp spoke of an interloper capable of defying death, of crushing demons with the precision of a god, and of surviving the scrutiny of humanity's most powerful enforcers. The reward for those who continue is immense. In the next part, you will witness the Doom Slayer confront an army of Chaos Space Marines led by a Chaos Lord, an enemy whose power rivals the Primarchs themselves. You will see the fury of hell collide with the cunning of chaos, and you will understand why even the mightiest warriors of Warhammer 40K must tremble when confronted by a force like him. Have you ever wondered what happens when a force of pure destruction meets the calculated cruelty of chaos? Doom Slayer had faced demons, Primarchs, and Inquisitors, but nothing could prepare him for the scale of war in this universe. The sector had already been destabilized by the arrival of Chaos Space Marines and word of the interloper. This unstoppable warrior had reached the ears of a Chaos Lord whose ambition rivaled the ruinous powers themselves. Entire worlds hung in the balance, and the fate of billions rested upon the actions of a single being who had no allegiance and no mercy. The battle began on the ash-covered plains of a decimated world. The sky burned with the orange glow of distant fires, and the ground trembled beneath the weight of armored titans and mechanical war engines. The Doom Slayer observed from a ridge, calculating. The enemy forces were vast. Squads of Chaos Space Marines, corrupted psychers, demonic entities, and twisted war machines, all marching with the singular purpose of annihilation. Yet the Doom Slayer's presence altered the dynamics of war itself. His reputation, his aura of inevitability, inspired those who fought beside him. Improvised militias, remnants of Imperial guards, and even hesitant Space Marines recognized the power at his command and followed, knowing that his fury was their only hope of survival. The Chaos Lord emerged at the forefront, massive and grotesque, adorned with the symbols of Khorne and T's Inch simultaneously, a walking contradiction of rage and cunning. Its voice boomed across the battlefield, a psychic resonance that sought to bend reality itself. Mortal, you defy the cosmos. Your rage will feed my ascension. But Doom Slayer did not hesitate. He charged, his footsteps tearing through rubble, his fists shattering armor, and his every movement a lesson in brutality. Unlike Hell, where chaos was raw and predictable in its madness, this battlefield required strategy, adaptability, and the ability to exploit both allies and terrain. The first clash was cataclysmic. The Chaos Lord swung a blade forged from warp, metal, slicing through columns and vehicles as if they were paper. Doom Slayer dodged and countered with superhuman reflexes, his gauntlets crushing corrupted Marines mid-strike. Every blow sent shockwaves across the battlefield. Psychers screamed as their spells were deflected or redirected, their minds unable to comprehend a force that moved with purpose beyond the warp's reach. And yet, the Doom Slayer did not fight alone. He had learned to harness the battlefield itself, using remnants of Imperial artillery, collapsing structures, and even the momentum of enemy war machines to his advantage. As the battle escalated, Doom Slayer's understanding of this universe deepened. He recognized that chaos did not merely rely on brute strength. It relied on manipulation, corruption, and exploiting fear. His enemies sought to sap his resolve, to turn his rage against him, yet he remained a singularity of purpose. Each step he took was calculated, each strike a blend of instinct and newfound knowledge of Warhammer 40K's rules. He adapted the lessons of the Inquisition's trials to the chaos of the battlefield, blending morality with pragmatism, strategy with raw fury. The tide of battle shifted when the Chaos Lord summoned a horde of demons, twisting the very fabric of the warp to tear through reality. Mountains crumbled, sky turned blood red, and psychic screams reverberated across the planet. Doom's Slayer met them head on, each movement annihilating enemies that should have numbered hundreds in seconds. Yet even as he fought, he realized the scope of the challenge. This was not merely about survival. It was about shaping the outcome of an entire war, influencing the fates of worlds, and leaving a mark upon the galaxy that chaos could never ignore. In a climactic confrontation, Doom's Slayer faced the Chaos Lord directly. They clashed atop the wreckage of a collapsed citadel, exchanging blows that fractured reality itself. The Lord attempted to manipulate Doom's Slayer with visions of despair, offering illusions of failure and death, but Doom's Slayer's mind was a fortress. Where others would hesitate, he acted, channeling rage into precision strikes that exploited both physical and psychic weaknesses. With a final, earth-shattering blow, the Chaos Lord fell, dissipating into a storm of war, energy, and shattered ambition. As the battlefield settled, Doom's Slayer stood amidst the ruins, breathing heavily, yet unbowed. Entire armies had fallen, demons had been banished, and the world, though scarred, remained free of total domination. For the first time, those who had watched him fight understood the magnitude of his presence. This was not merely a warrior. This was a force that could challenge gods, defy destiny, and reshape the very rules of Warhammer 40K. The reward for continuing is immense. In the next chapter, Doom's Slayer will confront a chaos, warped Primarch, a being whose power eclipses the previous encounters. You will witness the full scope of his adaptation, the merging of hell, born fury with the strategic mastery demanded by Warhammer 40K, and understand why even the mightiest of legions will hesitate when faced with a being that bends fate itself to his will. Have you ever stood before a being so vast, so twisted by power and hatred, that even the fury of hell feels inadequate? Doom's Slayer had battled armies of chaos, slain demons that reshaped reality, and survived the judgment of a loyal Primarch. Yet nothing could prepare him for the arrival of a Primarch corrupted by the warp, an entity whose ambition and rage rivaled the gods themselves. This was no longer a test of speed, strength, or reflex. This was a trial of existence itself. The corrupted Primarch appeared on the shattered plains of a dead world, his armor fused with demonic flesh, his weapons pulsing with raw warp energy. Once a servant of the Emperor, now a herald of chaos, his very presence distorted gravity, warped the air, and sent psychic ripples across the galaxy. Legion banners, torn and burning, fluttered around him, carried by demons and corrupted soldiers who knelt in terror and worship alike. His voice rolled like thunder across the battlefield. "Mortal, you dare challenge me. I am not merely a warrior. I am the wrath of gods, the end of legions, and the architect of your doom." Doom's Slayer did not flinch. The air itself seemed to resist his advance, the warp fighting to slow him, to twist his mind and bend his fury into despair. Yet the Slayer's power, forged in the fires of hell, was unique. Where others would falter, he advanced, cutting through corrupted warriors, smashing demonic constructs, and leaving devastation in his wake. Every strike was precise, yet unrelenting. Every movement calculated, yet fueled by an instinct that defied logic. For the first time, the Doom Slayer realized the true nature of the universe he had entered. Survival alone was meaningless. He had to dominate, adapt, and impose his will on a scale that even the most powerful beings of Warhammer 40K struggled to comprehend. The battle that followed was apocalyptic. The Primarch swung his colossal blade, each strike tearing through stone, metal, and the air itself. Warp energy radiated outward, corrupting the land, warping time, and summoning horrors from other dimensions. Doom Slayer countered, dodging attacks with a combination of raw speed and tactical genius. He began to exploit the weaknesses hidden within the Primarch's fusion of flesh, ceramite, and warp energy, striking at points where the chaotic power was least controlled. With each blow, the battlefield itself trembled, and the skies above seemed to split in response to the fury unleashed below. Yet the Primarch was no ordinary opponent. Every attack Doom Slayer made was anticipated, every movement countered with terrifying precision. The corrupted Primarch's mind was as honed as his body, and his mastery of warp-fused combat rivaled the knowledge of sorcerers and psychers combined. Doom Slayer felt the pressure of a force unlike any other, a being who combined the power of the warp with the tactical brilliance of a godlike warrior. Here, victory would not come from fury alone. It would require adaptation, cunning, and an understanding of Warhammer 40K's universe unlike anything he had yet faced. Through the chaos, Doom Slayer found an opening. The relic he had discovered in the fortress, monastery, a source of psychic resonance and ancient power, interacted with the Primarch's corrupted essence. By channeling his own energy through it, he could disrupt the unstable warp currents within the enemy, creating brief moments of vulnerability. Each strike had to be timed perfectly. Hesitation meant death. Every action became a dance of destruction and strategy, a balance between instinct and calculated brilliance. The climax of the battle was cataclysmic. The corrupted Primarch unleashed his full power, summoning a storm of warp energy so intense it threatened to tear the world apart. Mountains crumbled, oceans boiled, and the sky ignited with psychic fire. Doom Slayer met the assault head-on, his every movement a testament to his adaptability and raw might. With a final, earth-shattering strike, he shattered the Primarch's blade, severed the corrupted armor from the flesh, and drove his gauntlet through the heart of the warped, twisted warrior. The Primarch fell, not with cries of defeat, but with a final surge of warped energy that threatened to consume Doom Slayer himself. Yet the Slayer endured. His fury, his will, and his mastery of both instinct and newfound knowledge allowed him to survive the psychic backlash. When the dust settled, the battlefield was littered with the remnants of the corrupted legion, demons banished, and the ground itself scarred beyond recognition. The Doom Slayer stood alone, victorious, yet fully aware of the universe's vast and ongoing dangers. Even a fallen Primarch had been defeated, but countless others waited, each more cunning, more dangerous, and more impossible than the last. The reward for continuing is extraordinary. In the next part, you will witness Doom Slayer navigating the politics of the Imperium after this monumental battle, encountering factions that seek to use him, control him, or destroy him outright. You will see the tension between his unyielding will and the Imperium's need for obedience, and understand how a single being can change the course of galactic war without bending to loyalty, faith, or ideology. Have you ever wondered what it means to wield a power so great that the very foundations of an empire quake at your presence? Doom Slayer had faced demons, Chaos Space Marines, and even a corrupted Primarch. He had proven himself unstoppable, a force that defied the rules of mortality and the warp alike. Yet, The galaxy had its own laws written in faith, fear, and iron. The Imperium of man, vast and sprawling, did not tolerate anomalies. His presence was not just noticed, it was feared, studied, and, in some quarters, coveted. After the siege and the defeat of the Chaos, warped Primarch, Doomslayer's actions became impossible to ignore. The Inquisition had reported his victories across countless Vox channels, the whispers reaching even the High Lords of Terra. Here was a being who could annihilate armies without hesitation, survive psychic storms that would rend entire legions, and challenge entities that the Emperor himself had fought indirectly through. His sons, some saw him as a weapon, others saw a threat. The question that hung in the minds of every human leader was simple: could he be controlled, or would he burn them all in his path? Doomslayer was summoned to a council of the Imperium, a rare and tense assembly of representatives, inquisitors, chapter masters, and agents of the Adeptus Mechanicus. They convened in a fortress, monastery orbiting a dead planet, the architecture a mix of Gothic spires and technological might. Their faces, cloaked and stern, regarded him as both marvel and menace. Every word spoken was measured, every gesture deliberate, as if they were testing the limits of his patience. "You have done what no man, or legion, has achieved," said one inquisitor, his voice cold, tinged with awe. "And yet you act as if the galaxy itself exists for your fury alone. Do you comprehend the consequences of your actions? Billions of lives hang in balance. Entire worlds may fall into ruin because of your independence." Doomslayer's reply was simple, yet devastating in its clarity. "I do not act for conquest. I act for destruction of the guilty, protection of the innocent, and survival against the forces of hell and chaos alike. I will not kneel. I will not negotiate. I will not hesitate." The council murmured, for the words were both terrifying and awe-inspiring. This was not a warrior to command. This was a force of nature. And yet, the Imperium was not without its instruments. They offered alliances, resources, and guidance. Chapters of space marines, fleets of battleships, and psychers trained in the warp were made available, but always with conditions, chains of command, and expectations. To wield their power, Doomslayer would have to navigate a maze of loyalty, ideology, and bureaucracy, a test unlike any battlefield he had yet faced. The first test came quickly. A frontier world under siege by orcs had fallen into chaos, and the Imperium demanded swift action. Doomslayer led a strike force, combining space marines, Imperial Guard, and his own unmatched prowess. The orcs were brutal, unpredictable, and numerous, yet they were no match for the combination of his fury and the Imperium's military precision. He fought like a whirlwind, tearing through squads, obliterating war engines, and rallying allies to act with precision. Still, even in victory, he noted the limitations imposed upon him. Human allies, no matter how strong, could falter. Bureaucratic orders could slow decisive action. In this universe, even the strongest warrior could be hampered by obedience. But the Imperium itself was not uniform. Within its ranks were factions who viewed Doomslayer as a tool, others as a threat, and some as an omen. Rogue inquisitors sought to manipulate him, chapter masters debated whether to contain or ally with him, and Mechanicus adepts studied him as a living weapon, attempting to divine the source of his unmatched power. Doomslayer observed them all, learning quickly that strength alone could dominate enemies, but influence required cunning, perception, and patience. The tension came to a head when a conspiracy emerged. A faction within the Imperium sought to trap him, believing that a being capable of rivaling a Primarch could not remain free. They orchestrated a scenario designed to force him into compliance, worlds threatened by engineered disasters, psychers manipulated to attack him, and even loyal space marines ordered to intercept him. If he resisted, Doomslayer moved with efficiency and awareness, turning their schemes against them. Each move became a lesson in Warhammer 40K's politics, a study in the lethal combination of human ambition, fear, and fanaticism. By the end of this chapter, Doomslayer had survived not only a physical battlefield, but a web of intrigue, conspiracies, and ideological tests. He had established a tenuous position within the Imperium not as a servant, but as a force whose presence could not be ignored, constrained, or replicated. The galaxy now understood that he was not a simple warrior. He was a singularity, an agent of annihilation and judgment whose influence would ripple across stars, affecting the fates of countless worlds and legions alike. The reward for those who continue is profound. In the next chapter, Doomslayer will confront a coalition of chaos warlords and corrupted legions, orchestrated to challenge him directly, testing not just his strength, but his mastery over strategy, allies, and the very rules of war in Warhammer 40K. The coming battle will reveal why even the most cunning of Primarchs, the most disciplined space marines, and the most powerful sorcerers must fear the arrival of this unstoppable force. Have you ever imagined standing alone against a storm so vast it could swallow entire worlds? Doomslayer had confronted demons, corrupted Primarchs, and the manipulations of the Imperium. But now he faced a threat unlike any before, a coalition of chaos warlords and corrupted legions, converging on a strategically vital planet. The galaxy itself seemed to tremble, as if aware that the arrival of this singular force could reshape its very destiny. The battlefield stretched beyond comprehension. Mountains scarred by previous wars, rivers of molten metal, and cities reduced to ash formed the landscape. Above, warp storms churned the skies, and psychic screams echoed across the air. Doomslayer stood at the forefront, a solitary figure of fury amidst the chaos, his presence radiating both dread and hope. The coalition of chaos forces was vast. Hundreds of chaos space marines, demonic entities of unimaginable size, and war machines capable of leveling continents. Each warlord led their own faction, their coordination deadly yet flawed by the individual ambitions that drove them. As the first wave surged, Doomslayer moved like a force of nature. Bolter fire, demonic claws, and psychic lances were annihilated by his gauntlets, his speed, and his unerring instincts. He adapted instantly to battlefield shifts, using terrain, enemy momentum, and even the chaotic interplay of the warp to his advantage. Where others saw a massed army, he saw patterns, weaknesses, and opportunities. Each strike of his fists, each swing of his weapon, was both punishment and teaching, a demonstration of brutal efficiency that left friend and foe alike in awe. The Chaos Warlords were not mere generals. Each wielded powers that rivaled the Primarch he had defeated. One commanded firestorms of warp energy that reduced entire squads to ash. Another twisted reality itself, summoning phantasms and illusions to confuse and trap him. A third brought forth demonic engines that defied physics, moving with impossible speed and strength. Yet Doomslayer did not falter. His rage, honed in hell and refined through countless battles, now merged with tactical brilliance learned from previous encounters in Warhammer 40K. He struck decisively, exploiting each warlord's hubris and coordination flaws, dismantling their forces systematically. The battle escalated to a climactic confrontation when the most cunning of the Chaos Warlords, a sorcerer of Inch, unleashed a psychic maelstrom designed to trap Doomslayer in an endless loop of illusions, pain, and despair. Time fractured, landscapes shifted unnaturally, past, present, and potential futures collided. Even the Doomslayer's instincts were tested against the cunning of warp manipulation. And yet, he adapted. He recognized the illusions, deciphered the psychic patterns, and countered with unmatched precision. Where others might have been lost in madness, he transformed the chaos into a weapon, turning each attack against its origin. Amidst the destruction, Doomslayer realized the true nature of this universe's scale. Here, war was not simply physical, it was psychic, ideological, and existential. The combined forces of chaos sought not just to kill but to corrupt, to manipulate, and to warp the very essence of reality. Survival alone was insufficient. He had to dominate, to impose order through his fury, and to create a path of inevitability that even gods of chaos could not divert. As the dust of battle settled, the coalition lay in ruin. Warlords defeated, demons banished, and warp energies dissipated, the planet remained scarred but intact. Doomslayer had demonstrated that raw strength, fury, and relentless adaptation could overcome even the most cunning of opponents, but the universe had taken notice. The whispers of the warp now spoke his name with awe and fear. Even the high, estranking entities of chaos realized that here was a being who could not be manipulated, corrupted, or defeated by conventional means. Yet the victory carried its own consequences. The Imperium, watching from orbit and across countless sectors, recognized that Doomslayer's power was both a boon and a potential threat. Entire factions debated whether to attempt to control him, ally with him, or contain him. The galaxy itself seemed to shift in anticipation of what he might do next. And Doomslayer, ever unbound by allegiance, understood one thing clearly: the universe would never be the same. Wherever he walked, the rules had changed, and every being, mortal or godlike, would have to account for his presence. The reward for continuing this journey is even greater. In the next chapter, Doomslayer will confront the ultimate chaos incursion, where multiple corrupted primarchs, warlords, and demonic lords unite in an attempt to end his fury permanently. You will witness the true scale of his power, the merging of hell, born rage with strategic mastery, and why even the most powerful beings in Warhammer 40K must pause when he enters a battlefield. Have you ever imagined facing not one godlike enemy, but an entire pantheon of them? Doomslayer had conquered legions of Chaos Space Marines, felled corrupted primarchs, and survived the manipulations of the Imperium itself. But now, the galaxy trembled at the arrival of a coordinated force so vast, so malevolent, that its very existence threatened to rewrite the laws of reality. Multiple Chaos Warlords, each a master of a different domain, Khorne, Tease, Inch, Nurgle, and Slaanesh, had converged, joined by demonic lords, twisted titans, and entire corrupted legions. Their goal was simple yet terrifying: annihilate the Doomslayer before he could disrupt the dominion of chaos across the galaxy. The battlefield was apocalyptic. Worlds burned in the distance, rifts in the warp tore the skies apart, and psychic screams shook reality itself. Doomslayer stood at the forefront, unyielding, a singularity of fury against an impossibly coordinated tide of destruction. The Chaos Primarchs themselves led the charge, each a reflection of power corrupted to perfection. One wielded firestorms and lightning, another twisted flesh and bone into monstrous forms, while a third manipulated the warp to create illusions and trap reality in loops of despair. They moved not as a mob, but as an orchestra, every strike and strategy choreographed to crush him. The first clash was immediate and catastrophic. Doomslayer moved like a whirlwind, dodging attacks that could level continents, striking with precision that shattered war machines and felled demonic champions. He had learned to read patterns in chaos, anticipate moves dictated by warp-fueled prescience, and turn psychic assaults into advantages. Yet even his unparalleled power had limits. Each Primarch's presence alone distorted reality, and their combined might threatened to overwhelm him. He realized that brute force alone would not suffice. The universe demanded strategy, timing, and the cunning application of both rage and intellect. As the battle escalated, Doomslayer exploited the weaknesses inherent in Chaos's hubris. The corrupted Primarchs, though unimaginably powerful, were driven by pride, ambition, and personal vendettas. Doomslayer struck at these fissures, using their overconfidence to divide and conquer. He turned one faction against another, shattered the cohesion of their forces, and used the battlefield itself, rubble, warp anomalies, and collapsing terrain, as a weapon in his hands. Each move was surgical, a combination of instinct and strategic genius that no mortal or god could predict. The battle became a war of reality itself. Warp storms collided with psychic shields, firestorms met unbreakable armor, and demons tore through armies only to be obliterated in return. Doomslayer adapted constantly, his senses attuned to shifts in momentum, his mind a fusion of hell-born instinct and mastery of the rules of this universe. Where chaos sought to overwhelm with raw power, he countered with precision, adaptability, and unrelenting fury. The climax approached when the corrupted Primarchs attempted a combined psychic assault, intending to fracture Doomslayer's mind, body, and essence simultaneously. The warp twisted, time fractured, and reality itself seemed to shatter around him. Yet Doomslayer endured, channeling his fury through his understanding of the relics he had discovered, the lessons learned from previous battles, and the instincts honed over countless centuries of war. With a devastating combination of strikes, psychic disruption, and battlefield manipulation, he shattered the cohesion of the Primarch's assault, driving them into disarray. In a final, cataclysmic moment, Doomslayer confronted the central chaos nexus, the most powerful of the Primarchs, fused with demonic essence, a being whose ambition was to dominate the galaxy. Their clash sent shockwaves across the battlefield, tearing apart mountains, rivers, and the very air itself. Yet even in the face of such overwhelming power, Doomslayer's fury, skill, and adaptability proved unstoppable. With a single, decisive strike that combined physical might and psychic resonance, he shattered the corrupted Primarch, banished the demonic essence, and turned the tide of the battlefield permanently. When the dust settled, the galaxy itself seemed to exhale. Entire legions of chaos had been decimated, their warlords slain or driven into retreat, and the corrupted Primarchs were no more. Doomslayer stood alone amidst the ruins, a solitary force whose fury had reshaped the fate of countless worlds. Yet even in victory, he understood that the universe remained vast, dangerous, and unpredictable. The echoes of the warp whispered warnings of challenges yet to come. The reward for continuing is monumental. In the next and final chapter, you will witness Doomslayer confront the ultimate question. After conquering gods, demons, and corrupted Primarchs, what place does a being of his fury occupy in a universe governed by faith, hierarchy, and endless war? You will see the resolution of his journey, the final consequences of his presence, and the mark he leaves upon the galaxy, a conclusion both satisfying and unforgettable. What becomes of a force that has slain gods, shattered corrupted Primarchs, and turned the tide of galactic war. Doomslayer had faced every conceivable enemy: demons of hell, demonic legions, chaos space marines, and even the warped children of the Emperor himself. Yet victory had not brought clarity. It had brought understanding. In Warhammer 40K, power alone was insufficient. Survival alone was meaningless. To exist in this universe, one must impose not just force, but understanding, strategy, and an unbreakable will. The battlefield for the final confrontation was unlike any before. A dead world orbited a shattered sun, its surface a patchwork of ruins, molten rivers, and the detritus of civilizations long destroyed. Warp storms twisted the sky, and psychic screams echoed across reality. Doomslayer had drawn the attention of every surviving force agents of the Imperium, remnants of loyalist space marine chapters, and even the lingering whispers of chaos itself. All watched him, wary, awed, and fearful. The universe itself had begun to treat him as an anomaly, a singularity whose actions defied precedent. At the heart of the dead world awaited the final challenge, a convergence of power so immense that it seemed almost apocalyptic. Warp-tainted entities, corrupted remnants of the fallen Primarchs, demonic lords, and psychic storms coalesced into a single, pulsating nexus of destruction. This was not merely a battle. It was the universe's response to a force it could not control, a final judgment upon the Doomslayer. Its psychic voice reverberated through space. "Mortal, you defy the laws of gods, of men, of existence itself. Will you endure, or shall the cosmos reclaim you?" Doomslayer did not hesitate. His rage, honed over countless millennia, became a singularity of action and thought. He moved with impossible speed, striking at warped constructs and demonic champions, shattering psychic bonds, and bending the battlefield to his will. Every blow carried the weight of inevitability. Every motion was both attack and lesson. He had become more than a warrior. He was an agent of judgment, a force whose presence dictated the flow of reality itself. As the battle reached its zenith, Doomslayer realized a truth that even the mightiest Primarchs had never faced. Victory in this universe required more than destruction. It required understanding the rules of power, influence, and consequence. He began to manipulate the energies of the warp itself, redirecting psychic assaults, destabilizing demonic anchors, and turning the very fabric of reality into an instrument of his fury. One by one, the corrupted Primarch remnants were obliterated. Demonic lords were torn from existence. Warp storms collapsed under his mastery. The universe's final attempt to end him had failed. Yet in the silence that followed, Doomslayer faced the ultimate question. What place did a being like him occupy in a universe ruled by faith, hierarchy, and endless war? The Imperium, recognizing both the necessity and danger of his power, approached with caution. Inquisitors, chapter masters, and surviving psychers offered alliances, resources, and warnings. But Doomslayer did not bend. He understood that his path was singular, his purpose defined not by loyalty, ideology, or obedience, but by action, justice, and the relentless destruction of what threatened life and order. In the aftermath, Doomslayer became a legend whispered across stars. Entire worlds remembered his fury. Space Marine chapters honored his tactics. The Imperium feared the consequences of his continued existence, yet could not deny the salvation he had brought. Chaos trembled at his name, knowing that even the most cunning of gods could not predict, manipulate, or contain him. He had reshaped the galaxy, not through conquest, but through the relentless application of his will, the fusion of instinct and strategy, and the embodiment of unyielding judgment. The story concludes, not with finality, but with resonance. Doomslayer remains unbound, a force whose existence defines the very rules of engagement in Warhammer 40K. The universe has learned a lesson. Some forces are beyond control, beyond loyalty, beyond even the comprehension of gods. And when such a force walks the stars, the cosmos itself must adapt, or be consumed. To witness his journey is to understand the essence of power, fury, and consequence. From the fires of hell to the heart of the Imperium, from demonic hordes to corrupted primarchs, Doomslayer has proven that true might lies not just in strength, but in the relentless will to act. Adapt and endure. In a universe of endless war, he is the anomaly, the reckoning, and the unyielding judgment, an unstoppable force whose legend will echo through eternity.